All right, we have a special guest with us, the host of Truth or Skepticism, along with Tom Sosanoff. It's our special guest, Dylan Ratigan, is here, and that's the name of his show, Truth or Skepticism, and it's at tastytrade.com, #TT, #Truth Podcast. And here he is. It's Dylan Ratigan. Hi, Dylan. How are you, buddy?
James, it's a pleasure. Nice to be seeing you. How you been? How's the quarantine?
We are super pandemicked. I'm wiping everything down, and I'm not going out of my house. So how about you?
I try not to go in a house.
That a boy.
I've been sleeping under a tree.
All right, so I want to ask you the markets. Let me just tell people what happened today. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Markets update. Dow Industrial surge about 1,600 points at the start of a challenging week. And so there it is right there. There's the headline. It says the Dow Industrials rose 1,600 points as investors looked to early signs that lockdowns in the U.S. and Europe may be helping slow the coronavirus pandemic. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 7.7%, although it is still down more than 20% for the year. The S&P 500 climbed 7%, led by the utility sector, which rose 7.9%, followed by the materials and consumer discretionary groups, both up more than 7.5%. Everyone is desperate for good pieces of news, said Peter Cecchini, chief market strategist at Cantor Fitzgerald. He also said it doesn't necessarily reflect anything fundamental. Nothing's changed. So let's go to our man, Dylan Ratigan. Tell us, does that mean anything today that there was a big surge, a big rally on Wall Street?
I don't know if that means, listen, when you have a market that is dealing with this much uncertainty, all it really means is that it's trading on emotion and as opposed to anything based on reality. It's no different than a person who's having an intense emotional period in their lives where some days they actually might feel particularly good, but either way, they're not particularly stable. And so, listen, I do think that there is some, if you believe the numbers coming out of New York City and you believe the numbers coming out of Spain and Italy, there is some slowing in the rate of the movement of the virus. And so that's a real thing. And for all of my criticism or your criticism of the stimulus package is very effective in regard to financial assets, as we talked about. Doesn't do much for human beings right now. In fact, not much of anything, but it's good for the stock market. So I think between the implementation of the stimulus and the data and then the natural emotional intensity of a period like this, you're going to get these updates, but it doesn't indicate anything meaningful beyond that. In other words, it's not like this is over, right? And it's not even like the stock market thinks it's over. It just thinks that there's room for a little relief for the day.
Okay, so what do you? I know you can't. This is unprecedented, so we don't know what's going to happen. But I've said on this show that in a year or two, when you drive down the street, all those stores are going to be bought by a handful of corporations, or they're going to be vacant still. Is that true?
I mean, it's certainly likely. Yeah, it's more a matter of how much. I mean, the thing is, the number of like the little restaurants and the little stores that can go for longer than 2 or 3 months with zero income and then reopen as a business there are a lot of them that just can't do it. So you're just going to see a lot of businesses go away, and then the ones that can be rolled up by bigger investor groups will be assembled and acquired in the way that we described. Yeah. So you'll have 3 categories. You'll have those that go away, those that survive and are intact, and then those that are consumed by the financial apparatus.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So but people don't realize. Let's say the guy, the guy owned a nightclub, or the guy owned a restaurant, or the people owned a business, some kind of or a florist or whatever it was, and they're very good at business. They're going to move on to another business, right? They're going to be on trying to make money online somehow or doing something else.
Absolutely.
And so that store, even when everybody gets better and we get a vaccine, that store is not going to open back up. And,
that's right.
And what it's going to happen is it's going to be at fire sale prices. And then one of the companies or people who were handed some of the 4.2 trillion are going to use some of that 4.2 trillion to buy that store, right?
Yes, it's like a restructuring of the U.S. economy being influenced by a federal government choosing winners and losers by deciding who gets money and who doesn't.
So this is the exact thing that people on the right, at least in the right news media space, would scream about Barack Obama when he did that thing with Solyndra. Oh, but the government's picking winners and losers. And then this is exactly their recipe to fix this problem, right?
The irony is remarkable.
Okay. But no one seems to ever... Why is it, Dylan? Now, I consume a lot of news.
I mean, listen. We know the problem. We know the problem. The problem is the center left, the Schumer Pelosi left, that pretends to advocate for human beings while perpetually working on behalf of corporations and blaming Republicans for the work. I mean, there's a reason why I left political commentary in general, and it wasn't because Republicans were mean. It was because the actual political reality of the fraud on the Democratic Party side that's actually the single greatest enabler to all the corporate theft that we speak of, whether it's on the health insurance side, whether it's on the bank bailout side, whether it's on pharmaceutical drug pricing. All of those things are empowered through the faux rhetorical resistance of the center left that always ensures that they protect the private health insurance company, the pharmaceutical company, the banks, whoever it may be, while blaming the Republicans.
So
to the point where now you're even seeing Republicans like Donald Trump, although he's hardly a Republican, but people in that were on his side of the aisle advocate for things like Medicare for all, while Joe Biden resists it. It's preposterous.
So I've been going. So this is the stimulus bill has really. I knew all this, but I guess I closed an eye to it for a little bit. But this has really blown it off for me, and I've been going really hard at quote unquote the progressive elected leaders in Congress, including Bernie Sanders and AOC. And I'm getting a lot of pushback, people saying that I shouldn't do that. And
I saw somebody said they stopped subscribing. I saw you actually lost some business. I felt bad about that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
All right.
That's all right. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
All right.
There's lots of other fanboy news shows on the progressive side that guy can go watch because they're actively right now. I've only seen one other progressive news show actually tell people the truth about Bernie Sanders' role in the stimulus. Only one, and it was after they had told them misinformation for a week about it. Now they're finally telling them the truth because we've been telling the truth. So my point, Dylan, I wanted to ask you before, why is it that when I consume a lot of news, why is it no other news show is saying half the stuff that you said the first day we talked about this right after they passed the stimulus? So you came on.
I mean, why was I the only person in 2010 and 11 on MSNBC saying the things I was saying? It's incomprehensible. So it's not that I'm some sort of a super genius or you're a super genius,
right?
But you have to be willing to see the world not through the lens of a political party, but through the lens of human beings and the flow of money and resources. And if you see a bunch of human beings and then you see a distorted flow of money and resources, and then you see the policies that are creating that are being created by the Democratic Party in collusion with the Republican Party, even if they pretend resistance. I honestly, it's very I don't know what to tell you.
So do you think that
you're talking to the guy who called for a terminal bypass of both parties a decade ago. So
a decade ago.
What do you want me to tell you?
So I'm just trying to get, because you know much more about all this stuff than I do, so that's why I have you on. And so do you think my criticism, I've been going both barrels at Bernie Sanders and the squad for not doing anything, because they did nothing except exactly what you just said. They gave a grandstanding speech against the Republicans, which what that actually does is prop up the Democrats' corruption, because that's where the real problem is, correct? Because that's what I think. Because
that's my analysis. That was after spending 3 years in the belly of the beast doing daily political journalism with all the access that comes with being at a place like NBC in terms of being in the Congress, in the halls, all the things. My conclusion after 3 years was exactly what you just described.
And so I'm giving, even from my closest of friends, they're telling me that, Jimmy, you can't go this hard on Bernie. And I just keep telling them, yeah, you're wrong. You'll all come around, just like you were wrong about Russiagate. You're wrong about gas attacks in Syria. You're wrong about Venezuela. You were wrong about Bernie running inside the Democratic Party. You've been wrong about everything. And they're slowly, and you're wrong about criticizing them over this bill. And now they're slowly starting to come around. I just saw another progressive news show actually do a critical a segment on the way the progressives in Congress, including Bernie Sanders and AOC, handled the thing. And they're actually starting to call them out for their grandstanding speeches, because when Bernie gave a speech against the Republicans and AOC gave a speech against the Republicans and not calling out the Democratic leadership or the way they put together the bill, that was political cowardice. That was kabuki theater, and no one else will tell them that. And I think it's super, super important for people to understand exactly who Bernie Sanders actually is, and exactly when you elect someone to Congress, what they're actually going to do. They're not fucking radicals. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. So let me just throw it back to you. Do you think, is it, I mean, I don't know what else to do except use my platform to pressure our politicians right now and raise everybody else's consciousness about actually what's going on. Do you think people still know today, Dylan? Because they don't. I watch news shows and news people have no idea what's in that bill or what's coming. Is that accurate observation that even news people still to this day don't know, and the politicians, by the way, still don't know what's coming?
100% chance. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be giving you one-word answers, but the reality is that it's when it comes to any legislation, let alone legislation that has to do with money, the degree of ignorance that prevails throughout our entire political and media class is profound and ubiquitous. And as a result, it allows for those within the financial class who can pull the political strings to do really what they want, as they demonstrated in 2009 and repeated again in the past couple of weeks, with zero consequences other than some cheerleading from people who parrot whatever they're told.
Right. So,
and then people argue that I'm extreme or that you're extreme because we are making the case empirically and factually that the Democratic Party is not a solution to any of America's political problems. In fact, you might be better off pressuring the Republicans at this point for Medicare for All and UBI than you are Democrats. I think there's probably more receptivity on the right than there is on the left to the most basic resources for America in a time like this, as bizarre as that might be.
As bizarre as that might be, Dylan, I've actually started texting and emailing people inside the Sanders campaign, kind of sticking it in their ear, saying you had your fucking boy run inside the wrong pro-war Wall Street party. He should have ran inside the Republican pro-Wall Street party, because at least they listened to Bernie. Trump is now proposing Medicare pay everybody's coronavirus treatments forever. Right? So that's more than Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They're still means testing a fucking $1,200 payment, right?
Exactly. On this sort of faux, I mean, all this pretending that America is this capitalist country, whatever that even means at this point, while the actual sort of holders of the moral high ground of righteousness against the evil and disgusting Donald Trump. Yeah. That's why people elected Donald Trump and honestly like Bernie Sanders, because the disgust with the hypocrisy and sanctimony that came off of the Clintons, that comes off of Biden, and that Barack Obama proved himself to be a clear agent of, despite early expectations to the contrary. All of that betrayal, which everybody can feel, is what has created the fuel for Donald Trump. I can't tell you how many people that are horrified by Donald Trump at a level that is, as much as anybody you'll ever talk to. But when you push them on whether they would vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, given that sort of choice, they might choose Donald Trump just on the FU to the Democrats. How dare they after sticking Hillary Clinton in everybody's face, now you're going to stick Joe Biden in everybody's face?
They're trying to well, they're of course once again playing their own people for suckers by saying, well, you guys didn't like Hillary Clinton. How about a demented Hillary Clinton with a penis?
I mean, it would be if it wasn't so tragic and there weren't so many people dying. Honestly, I go back to it, and I know there's lots of negative things to be said, and I could say 1,000 negative things about a lot of these people, but I still feel like this country's lucky to have. I feel like Gavin Newsom has done a good job with this virus. Period.
Okay.
I feel like Andrew Cuomo, and I know there's people go to say, how could you say something nice about Andrew Cuomo? And he's done lots of horrible things, even cutting the Medicare. I mean, even recently, just abominable behavior on his part. But relative to the standard of leadership on the federal level, I'll take Andrew Cuomo and Gavin Newsom every time, along with even John Bel Edwards in Louisiana. Like, at least we have some governors in this country who are attempting to do something, which is more than I could say for Pelosi, Schumer, or anybody else.
It's certainly a low bar, and you're correct. And
I know it's a low bar.
Yes, and I'm glad you put all those caveats in there in front of Andrew Cuomo because they're all necessary. In the middle of a pandemic, he's still trying to cut $2.5 billion from Medicaid. So he's not the answer or the solution, although he does give a better press conference than Donald Trump. He gives you more confidence. And Gavin Newsom actually is doing some things. He's getting rid of he's trying to take care of the homeless population now. At
least he created that buyers group since the federal government refuses to coordinate supplies.
So tell me about that.
So, I mean, the federal government should be coordinating all the supplies, right?
Right.
In terms of ventilators and whatever, but Trump refuses to do it. And so Newsom finally came out and said, listen, I'm not going to compete with other states because California obviously is the 800-pound gorilla economically in this country.
Right.
I'm going to create a group within the states of governors, and we will buy as a consortium, as one group, instead of bidding against each other, which is basically a field adaptation to a broken system. There's no reason why a state governor, there's no reason the governor of California should be the one who has to lead a national buyers group for emergency medical supplies, other than the fact that no one else is doing it.
Well, the reason why Gavin Newsom has to do that is because his party is so ineffective and so corrupt that people got so desperate after 8 years of Barack Obama rule, they voted for a clown who won't fucking do the thing he's supposed to do now. So it's kind of their own fault.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And they're not changing, by the way. So, in California, we have a supermajority Democrats in the legislature, and we have a Democratic governor, and we've had that for a while, and we still don't have any of the things all the progressives say they want, like Medicare for all. It's the fifth largest economy in the world, California, and we still have 110,000 people on the streets. We still don't have Medicare for all. We still don't have student debt. We don't have free college. We don't have fucking anything. So the answer, again, you are right.
Democrats don't want Medicare for all, and they don't want basic resources for people.
That's right.
That's the cognitive dissonance that people on the left either understand and don't know what to do about it, or refuse to understand. And honestly, I don't blame them, because once you really internalize the reality of this discussion, you're really left with no point of political approach. And so it becomes incredibly disempowering and depressing for people. And so you can understand why people are hesitant to internalize this frame.
So you mentioned, by the way, I want to let everybody know Dylan's going to be taking your questions in a few minutes. So if you have questions about anything, go ahead and send them in on a super chat, and we'll read them to Dylan, and we'll get to as many as we can. Dylan will stay on with us for about an hour or so. And so Dylan, going forward, I want to do something like, when FDR was president, there were a lot of strikes happening all over the place, and they were forcing the legislature's hand to do things, especially FDR. What can someone like me do to help bring that about? Like, I was thinking of maybe I could set up a website where it could be like a center for all the wildcat strikes that are happening, so people could, I don't know what to, but I want to do something, because I can't put on a yellow vest and get in the street, which is what this moment calls for, but we can't do it because there's a pandemic. So what can we do? And do you have any
I mean,
ideas?
the obvious thing would be some form of a rent strike or some sort of basically stopping payments on collections.
Right.
But the challenge with that is if you're the only one doing it,
Right.
you're really going to be in the weeds, So it's you don't want to be the first one over the ledge on that one.
That's why we need.
That's the obvious. That's the. If you're wondering where, if anywhere, there's a point of leverage, it's in the stream of payments.
Right. So credit card strike, student loan payment strike, rent strike, mortgage strike. Right. Put them all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what kind of a leader could get that done? Now, people keep telling me that someone who's elected to lead you actually can't do that because they're elected, which to me makes absolutely no sense. Yeah, I could get, like, if the unemployment goes up 2% more, you can't have a senator lead a strike. But in the middle of the fucking apocalypse, we need our elected leaders to actually do shit. Am I wrong about this?
No, you're not. It's just a matter of the risk in that is unless the participation rate is massive, it simply creates it's an act of self-destruction for those who do it.
Right, but if they have a guy in the Senate who's got their back and a bunch of people in the Congress who's got their back, and then they can pick up some governors who got their back, I mean, that's how you start something. You don't start with a huge snowball.
Absolutely. No, that's right. That's right. I hadn't thought about it in that context, but what you're saying makes a tremendous amount of sense and it has a lot of logic to it. If you had that kind of leadership behind it, that might be the only way it would work.
Yeah, that's the only way it will work, which is why I'm screaming at my elected officials to actually do something. And everyone else, if you watch the progressive news space, everyone's pretending like this is just another vote. Like this was just another bill, and you can't really hate, no one's perfect and shit like that. Like ridiculous. The most ridiculous things you're hearing from the progressive news space about what just happened because they don't know what just happened. They have no idea of the enormity of what just happened, and therefore their shows are useless because they don't know what to fucking tell their people. And what I'm trying to find out something to actually tell people. What should we actually be fucking doing? And people still think that Bernie Sanders is running for president. He's not running for president. When he was asked after Super Tuesday by Seth Meyers, hey, do you think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump? And he said, yes, I do. He forfeited the presidential race. It is over. Bernie Sanders is no longer running for president. In fact, the people at the top of his campaign are urging him to get out. So he never was running for president, in case you didn't know that. And I know that hurts people's feelings to hear that, but you have to hear that. Bernie Sanders was never making a serious run for the presidency. Okay? He was kind of making a run for the presidency if they would allow him to have it, just like in 2016. And you and I both know they were never going to allow him to have it. And basically, Bernie's there to suppress third-party movements. And that's what he's been doing his whole fucking career.
Boy, and he's there as a way to absorb all that energy and diffuse it and make it impotent.
People don't realize this, Dylan. They go, but Bernie's a good guy. I know he's a nice guy. And the establishment uses Bernie to do exactly what you're saying. All the rage and the energy that the progressive movement has, he takes it, funnels it into the Democratic Party, and then tells you to put all that towards the establishment. He did it in 2016. He's about to do it again. That's his role, whether he knows it or not. Do you think he knows that's his role?
I think that he believes that he can pull this off, and I think that the center-left power structure doesn't think he can pull this off, and as a result, thinks he's very useful as a lightning rod to absorb otherwise hostile or chaotic energy and allow it a place to go that allows it to diffuse and become irrelevant.
Exactly. And I've said this immediately when the Justice Democrats started and everybody was putting all their focus into primarying bad Democrats. And I said, okay, if this doesn't work with Bernie Sanders, what has he built over these 4 years? And nothing. It turns out nothing. And he's going to tell his movement to back Joe Biden in a second. So again, this doesn't take genius because I'm far from it. And all it takes is the courage to see reality. And the progressive space hasn't had that courage since Bernie Sanders popped up on the scene to fucking sheep herd everybody back into the Democratic Party. Do you agree with that?
Where people get frustrated listening to somebody like you, or they would get frustrated listening to somebody like me, and I don't blame them, is, okay, Jimmy, I accept everything you and your buddy Ratigan are saying, but now what am I supposed to do?
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, what I should tell people, because what I've been trying to do is...
And that's why people get angry at you when you say these things, is because then you leave them feeling completely powerless and frustrated.
All right, here's a question.
So that's, hold on one second, please. So that's why I'm trying to ask. I have you on. I'm asking other people, what do we do in a moment?
Matt Dore.
Yeah, I'm like, what do we do in a moment like this? And I'm reaching out to union leaders. You're right about we need to go on a payment strike. We need to go on a credit card strike, student loan strike, and
okay,
a
when
mortgage
you say
strike.
that, how does that work? You can say the student loan strike, mortgage strike.
So what
How
I'm
does
saying
that
is,
ultimately-
you have to have an organizing power.
But what Jimmy's
essential
saying is, without a political organization of prominent governors and political leaders to support its process, it's a doomed proposition.
Right. So without people in power saying, yes, I support this,
Okay.
It won't work. And it will be probably scattershot. You can't get... So what they're doing now is organizing on local levels, like in San Francisco. We'll do a rent strike in this specific area, which seems more... You can pull that off easier because without any... So that's... There's only a certain things we can do inside of a pandemic where you can't go outside and organize. And one of the things is we have to do a payment stoppage to grab power, because if anything has shown who has the power in this country right now, I mean, the real power, it's the essential workers and the people who have to pay their credit card bills, because this is a consumption economy. It's like 80% of the economy is fucking consumer driven. And so we have all the power, and we need somebody in Senate to stand up and tell people that they actually have all the power. And you should listen to this guy. He's going to organize your rent strike. And that's what we need somebody in power to do, but they're never going to do it, Dylan, as you and I know, because AOC and Bernie work for the party. Correct?
No, there's absolutely no question in my mind.
Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?